officiating funerals and weddings. So if you know of anybody who has a need for that, call me. So, okay, shameless plug. We're all called, I believe, with all my heart, that we're to be angels on earth. We each can be divine sparks wherever we are and touch the hearts of those we encounter along the way. A higher call can offer itself when you least expect it, and usually that's what happens. In that moment, the action you take becomes a choiceless choice. Thomas Merton, one of my favorite teachers, had a sudden insight at the corner of 4th and Walnut, now 4th and Mohammadi Boulevard down in Louisville, Kentucky. He lived in a Trappist monastery. He's a Trappist monk in a monastery at Gethsemane. He had it on March 18th, 1958, that led him to redefine his monastic identity with greater involvement in social justice issues. He was already known as a great author. I think 7-Story Mountain already came out, and for a monk that was pretty heady. But his entire life changed when he stepped off that corner at 4th and Walnut, and these are his words. He was suddenly overwhelmed with the realization that I loved all these people. He then said they were all walking around shining like the sun. When I go to Louisville, it's one of my favorite places to go to first because there's a big bronze plaque there that the state has had. It's been there for years, and I always kind of put my hand on it quietly, just in honor of that experience that Thomas Merton had. For over 2 years, Julia Butterfly Hill lived in a canopy of an ancient redwood tree called Luna. On December 18th, 1999, she came down after 2 years at the age of 26 to a world that recognized her as a hero and powerful voice for the environment. I dig that story because we brought Julia Butterfly Hill, her very first visit to Indianapolis, and we did a 3-day workshop called Love in Action. Julia joked that climbing a tree for 2 years was not in her 10-year plan. She was actually traveling with her dad, who was an itinerant preacher. She was studying to get a business degree, but this was during the summer, and her mom was in there, and they had this really funky camper, and they ended up in California, and the first time she saw a redwood tree, she fell madly in love. And then she saw the loggers chopping them down. And then she saw the protesters around this one particular tree. That's a tree Julia called Luna. It's still there. And she made, and I borrowed it from her, a choiceless choice. She's never done anything like this before. She said, I have to get up in that tree. Well, redwoods are pretty tall. They had pulleys and things like that. They built a canopy for her. During that time, I will say, she was taunted constantly by the loggers. People would shoot at her, not to hit her, but to come close. Through storms, through rain, she went up just wanting to save a tree. Nobody knew who she was, and unbeknownst to her, she came down an international environmental celebrity. Another higher call, choiceless choice. I remember standing in line at Target, and we've all had experiences like this, and it still kind of breaks my heart a little bit. This lady went there to get a few things, and she had the coupons that people used to use, food coupons. She was poor, obviously, and the government helped her with some of those things, and thank God for that. But there were some coupons that wasn't covering some things that her children needed, which really surprised me. I won't get into that. But I just know the awkwardness because the clerk, probably doing their job, was losing patience. Man, that we can't do that. We can't do that. And I just stood there behind her. So what I said, something like, and I kind of lied, but I felt it was the right thing to do. I said, ma'am, excuse me, I can't help it overhearing this conversation. You know, I was in a situation like you not long ago, in a similar situation. And you know what? Some person helped me out that day. It's my turn to help you out. And I said, sir, I'm paying for all of this for her. And I got more out of it than probably she did. But how many of you have had those experiences, you know? Maybe you can talk about it during coffee time afterwards because they come up when we least expect it. Rumi, he says, be a lamp, be a lifeboat, or a ladder. Help someone's soul heal. Walk out of your house like a shepherd. So, how do we prepare our hearts? How do we prepare our minds to be like a shepherd or a lamp? I'll quickly go through these, but I came up with these 5 acts of sacred service. And I got inspired by hanging out with a guy named Andrew Harvey, who's pretty radical, and actually coined the term sacred activism. And I picked 5 because at that time I thought, I have 5 fingers. Okay, that's easy to remember, although arthritis isn't one of them, but still I got 5 fingers. Serving the divine. And as we talk about in this fellowship, the divine can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. So I like to use the word the divine. Serving the divine. Turning to the divine, to whatever way you can imagine it. Serving in devotion and gratitude. Asking humbly to illuminate your mind with sacred wisdom. Keep your heart on fire with a passion of compassion for all beings. Don't let your heart get hard. It's so easy to be cynical. We live in a cynical world. Borrowed that from Jerry Maguire. But it's true, more than ever than I've ever seen. We can't allow ourselves to ever get into that position. Our hearts need to be wide open, broken open, as Joanna Macy would often say. Keep filling your body with sacred energy for whatever work it calls you to do in the world. There's so many beautiful faiths and religions we can borrow from. I do all the time. And it really helps to get prepared as you walk out of your house, because you never know what you're going to encounter. Again, that was a Target store. That's serving the divine. Number 2, serving ourselves as an instrument. I'm bringing this up because this is an incredibly beautiful fellowship. Some of us were together back at UUI. I was a member there at the time when everyone left and really birthed this fellowship here. I remember all of that. But we're here to serve. I've always believed that. How can I be used? Every day I try to ask that question, because we're all just walking each other home, right? We all need one another. So, serving ourselves as an instrument. Grow strong spiritually and physically, being a container for the energy for service. Loving the divine feminine can teach us how to mother ourselves, how to nurture ourselves. When I would ask these radio guests when I had the radio show, and our topics were a variety of topics, and a lot of these people were best-selling authors, interview's over, we're still on the phone. I say, by the way, I'm having a little test. What do you think is the greatest need in the world? And they'd always say loving ourselves. We beat ourselves up all the time. We have to learn to love ourselves. Another one, looking after the soul through sacred practice. Meditation, yoga, tai chi, qigong, whatever that sacred practice is for you. I think it's really important that we do some body movement and that we have also some kind of sacred practice in our life. Looking after the soul through constant inspiration. Always have on hand with you in your invisible toolbox or on your phone an inspirational quote, maybe a little passage out of a book that really inspired you. Find what that is and carry it with you. When I go someplace like a post office and I'm having a long line, I always have something handy with me. Usually it's on my phone now. But it's important to do that just to inspire your mind, because you never know what kind of incident is going to happen. These synchronicities that are so beautiful that take place in the world. Look after the soul. How about looking after the heart and its emotions by deep shadow work? I find that for that I need help. That's why I personally have a spiritual director who happens to be a psychotherapist, but I get spiritual director services for that fee and not the psychotherapy fee. So Karen helps me. She's my mirror, someone who doesn't know me, but I can go deep and explore any insecurities or shadows that I carried from wounds that I had from years ago. How about another one? Look after the heart. Also look after the body. Diet, exercise, and most importantly, sufficient rest. Rest. I think workaholism is still applauded in this country. Rest. Take time. Back away. We need to be doing that. 3, serving ourselves, serving others, all sentient beings. Every person, animal, and nature are all the divine in disguises. I've always loved that term namaste, which you often hear in yoga studios. My dear friend who passed away years ago, and she was my board member on Journeys Far International, Sister Judian, who was a radical nun. She had a master's in nursing, and she loved men. And I loved that about her, because she was 80-some years old, and she would flirt with me. But it was innocent, so I liked that. But she said one day, Richard, She said, the world would be a better place if we could all live. Namaste. If we could all live. Namaste. That spark of the divine in me recognizes and honors that spark of the divine in you. Your enemy is as much as the divine as you are. The waiter serving you is the divine. The annoying old woman talking too loudly is the divine. The homeless man on the street is the divine. When we show respect to those with whom we disagree, it disarms them and it tunes you in to really the divine or the purity, I would even say the love of all things. And this was one of the last lines in the Earth Charter. My dear friend John Gibson, who passed away a long time ago, he was really the founder of that, and now it's thriving and growing. Awakening to a new reverence for life means all sentient beings, one another. We're awakening to that, where we're allowing that head knowledge, which is okay, to drop into our heart, which is illumination. 4, serving our community. Think globally, act locally. And how about this? Look at 1 or 2 causes that break your heart and follow that. I love what Aristotle said years ago, one of my all-time favorite quotes. Aristotle said, where the needs of the world and your talents cross, there lies your vocation, your calling. If you're wondering, what's my calling? Aristotle would say that's it. What are the needs of the world that awaken you? What are the needs of the world that when you look at the news, that particular need strikes a chord? Well, think about getting involved in that locally with an organization or what have you. You'll find that if you haven't done that, you're going to start getting more purpose and more sense of joy in your life as well. But that's serving our community. And then finally, 5, serving globally. We are all global citizens. I've always said this: one world, all sacred. One world, all sacred. Everyone affects everyone else. So help us, may we look at our investments, our lifestyle, our consciousness at every level. We live in what I still believe to be the most powerful country in the world, and we still do have a voice in its decisions. And I pray that on November 5th, we use that voice like we've never used it before. It's going to be so very important that we do that. So those are the 5 acts of sacred service. If we're open to a higher call, if we go leaving our houses and we're open to that, you'll find that synchronicity will often bring that to you. A good book I might recommend, it's not in my notes, Sidewalk Oracles by Robert Moss. Moss Dreams. He's one of the greatest dream experts in the world. He was my absolutely favorite guest because he had that Australian accent and he was a storyteller. And I'd ask one question and he'd take over the whole show. But Sidewalk Oracles is about how to identify little things in your life every day that are nudging you to where you need to be. It's the most practical book I've ever read, and it's written by a dream expert. Sidewalk Oracles is a book. So, in closing, my children, it's like the pastor saying, my final point. Listen, children, to a story that was written long ago about a kingdom on a mountain and the valley folk below. On the mountain was a treasure buried deep beneath the stone. And the valley people swore they'd have it for their very own. Go ahead and hate your neighbor. Go ahead and cheat a friend. Do it in the name of heaven. You can justify it in the end. There won't be any trumpets blowing come the judgment day. On the bloody morning after, one tin soldier rides away. So the people of the valley sent a message up the hill asking for the buried treasure, tons of gold for which they'd kill. It came an answer from the mountain. With our brothers we will share all the secrets of our mountain, all the riches buried here. Now the valley cried with anger, mount your horses, draw your sword. And they killed the mountain people. So they won their just reward. Now they stood beside the treasure on the mountain, dark and red. And they turned the stone and looked beneath it, and peace on earth was what it said. Go ahead and hate your neighbor. Go ahead and cheat a friend. Do it in the name of heaven. You can justify it in the end. There won't be any trumpets blowing come the judgment day on that bloody morning after one tin soldier rides away. So, what's the moral of the story? Don't be a tin soldier. Be a lamp, or a lifeboat, or a ladder. Help someone's soul heal. Walk out of your house like a shepherd. And blessed be.